Mario Tennis Fever's credits have dropped, and while it's mostly fairly standard in terms of the array of credits behind the game, it may hint at the contours of a shake-up behind the scenes in the future, perhaps a glimpse into what Mario Tennis and golf games may become post-Camelot, or at least after the retirement of the Takahashi brothers who founded and run Camelot Software Planning. In this video, therefore, we will explore what the credits seem to show about Camelot and perhaps, more revealingly, who turns up in the credits from Nintendo. So to be clear, it does appear that yet again, the Takahashi brothers, Hiroyuki and Shugo, are the game design leads, with Shugo directing the title and Hiroyuki producing, their classic partnership. The Camelot credits are still full of people with very long histories with the development team, even going back to their pre-Camelot days in many cases. Assistant director Yosuke Sugimoto got his start on the 90s Zelda-like Shining Wisdom. Camelot don't seem to have expanded their team significantly. If anything, they seem a couple of people down from Mario Golf Super Rush, but both games have Camelot at low 40s numbers of staff. Therefore, is the best explanation for the 4.5-year wait for this title, longer by far than the 3 years between Mario Tennis Aces and Mario Golf Super Rush, simply that 4K gaming took them a fair bit more time? Well, maybe. The biggest expansion in the credits comes not in Camelot, but in their partners, Digital Media Labs, who seem to be supporting extensively on graphics, animation, cinematics, and such like. Several of Nintendo's artists have also pitched in. We also know that Camelot have been taking on other work such as mobile and web development, and it seems plausible that they needed this side business to support themselves alongside the distended development of Mario Tennis Fever. For this reason, I would speculate that the next Mario Golf game may not be quite such a long way away, although that would still give the game until the summer of 2030 potentially, which is 4 whole years. For those of you hoping for a reinvention of a classic of Camelot's past like Shining Force or even Golden Sun, there's not really a sliver of comfort here except that Camelot remains pretty much with the same group that it ever had, even though Hiroyuki will likely be in his 70s by the time the next game releases, so it remains to be seen whether the company will continue in its current trajectory for very much longer. I'm not even sure whether a flat acquisition from Nintendo would make sense for them at this point, since so much of the core team came up together and therefore will be of a particular age. It might be more sensible if Camelot wound up and then Nintendo hired the developers they wanted to work with. I certainly think it's seriously questionable whether, in 8, 9, 10 years, we'll be enjoying another Mario Tennis title from the Takahashi brothers. Nintendo themselves have a co-director on this project, and he's the same person who has been co-directing with Camelot Software Planning since Mario Tennis Aces and had other roles in prior projects, that being Tomohiro Yamamura. However, in other respects, the credits hint at some potential realignment behind the scenes, although we need to be a bit cautious about this. So first of all, what's kind of curious, I think, is that Shigeru Miyamoto is credited as being a supervisor, making me wonder if there was some element of planning to have this crossover with parts of the movie, perhaps particularly the Baby Mario elements. Shigeru Miyamoto occasionally does have credits. He was credited on F-Zero 99 and he was credited on Pikmin 4 and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but it's still a relatively unusual thing these days. It's evident that there's a lot of special thanks from EPD10 as well, and this is the first time that we've seen this kind of thing from them. The production managers still include co-production group leaders like Shinya Saito and Toyokazu Nanaka, but also Nobuo Matsumiya, who had kibitzed on sports titles like Mario Super Sluggers and the Mario and Sonic titles, but who has mostly been doing stuff either in the Kirby or EPD10 spheres over the years. Now, I've speculated a few times that we're probably approaching a more significant reorganization of Nintendo's internal teams than usual. These usually accompany significant changes in personnel, such as when Miyamoto and then Takahashi took over game development. With Takahashi in his mid-60s and Nintendo soon to transition to a new building, the likelihood is that we'll see some kind of new set of groups forming. Now, one thing I've speculated about in a potential reorganization is that they might seek to have a central producing hub for Mario, coordinating the franchise between the games, but also with the films and merchandising. At the very least, bringing Mario Tennis Aces a little more into the orbit of EPD10 might suggest a step towards that, although the bones of the credits are pretty much as previous Camelot titles have been in recent times, and of course, there are many other Mario groups who aren't particularly referenced here. However, is that even what's really going on? Are we seeing a centralization of the Mario group, or is this just a case of the EPD10 team behind Wonder putting specific elements into place for Mario Tennis Fever? So I'm intrigued with this by the order of the names, which doesn't seem to be in any obvious order. Takashi Tezuka is credited first as he has the seniority, and that seems fair enough, while we also have the sound programmer Sanae Uchida at the bottom. We can also see Shiro Mori and Koichi Hayashida, the two developers most closely associated with the nuts and bolts of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and given the various Wonder elements, this might explain their presence on the credits. There's also Mario Kart character designer Masanobu Sato coming over. While he didn't work on World, he has a deep history with Mario design work before becoming the art director for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But perhaps the credit that's most interesting for its placement is Sakota Higashi, a developer at Nintendo since Wii Music, but whose first game design credit was on Super Mario Bros. World. There she was one of only 9 core game designers credited, although not the highest of the 9, if those were indeed arranged in terms of seniority. While the other credits seem fairly obvious for special thanks because of their seniority, Higashi doesn't particularly have that kind of profile, and I wonder if she might have taken a more active interest in Mario Tennis Fever, and perhaps this is an indication that she might be more involved, perhaps as a coordinator, in games to come. On balance, though, given that her history before Wonder is particularly with UI design, I suspect this may be what she focused on, which makes sense since Wonder and, from what I can see, Tennis Fever have pretty great user interfaces. Therefore, at this point, I don't necessarily think that this is a sign that EPD10 are going to be taking over the supervision of the Mario Tennis games, but it wouldn't completely surprise me either if we start to see this in the future. As for my own perspective, while I enjoy Mario Tennis games in general, I must admit I'm currently unlikely to pick this title up. I have a couple of dozen hours in Tennis Aces and I like it fine, especially local multiplayer, but it's not something I've revisited recently, and with so many past Mario Tennis options already available through Nintendo Switch Online, the new game would have to do something fairly substantial to justify the full price, even if I had plenty of time to play a lot of games currently, and I didn't have titles I'm still catching up with. One intriguing comment from Alex's review on Nintendo Life, though, did catch my attention, which is that, as he put it, a full tennis RPG would be really great, even if the mechanics on the modes that we got in this game were for him a little undercooked. It makes me wonder whether Nintendo might actually try to do a full DLC for Tennis Fever. In certain respects, building off all the existing work and doing something RPG-ish would be right in Camelot's wheelhouse. I can't see it selling though, given the game's more casual profile on balance, and the surfeit of other Mario RPG experiences on the Switch in recent years means that I think overall it's a pretty low chance, although it might help Camelot with cash flow if Golf is a similarly protracted development as was Fever. Okay, all that is enough for now, but please do check out the Patreon for early, ad-free and exclusive content. Thanks so much for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.